Hello there, Star Wars fans. Thank you for tuning in to your favorite intergalactic frequency. Today, I want to take a look back and talk about Kathleen Kennedy's interview with Deadline, where she tried to clarify her future at Lucasfilm and the state of Star Wars. With the new teaser trailer for the Mandalorian Grogu movie dropping recently, I want to see how some of what she said has panned out since February and give my thoughts. And let me tell you, after rereading this article and seeing how things have evolved since then, I've got a lot to say. Because once again, Kathy manipulated the narrative, dodged accountability, and pretended like the last decade of mismanagement was a myth. She says she's not retiring, she says she's still producing, she says succession planning is in the works, and there's a leak from before this came out that she is waiting for a quote-unquote big win before she leaves. But if you look closer at her words, it's just another example of why Kathleen Kennedy needs to step down and why Star Wars deserves better leadership. So let's break this article down and let me give you my unfiltered take on why it's long past due for Kathleen Kennedy to walk away. So first, I'm going to skip the first few paragraphs here because it is just kind of ridiculous, this fluff, this setup into the questions. So right at the start, Kennedy says, "The truth is, and I want to just say loud and clear, I am not retiring. I will never retire from movies. I will die making movies." Now, I don't know about you, but when the first thing you feel is the need to clarify, "I'm not retiring," it sounds like damage control. And honestly, that's all this interview felt like, a carefully managed PR exercise with a writer who has already shown his true colors by glazing Kathy, throwing shade at baloney at Puck News, and of course blaming Star Wars fans in the beginning of this article before these well-crafted questions began. The problem here isn't whether she personally keeps making movies. I mean, she'd make movies forever. But the problem is her leadership at Lucasfilm. Under Kennedy, the Star Wars brand has been diluted, fractured, and mismanaged. All the obvious things you've heard. Yes, The Mandalorian was a success, at least the first 2 seasons in my opinion, but that was really Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni. Meanwhile, the sequel trilogy was a disaster. Solo underperformed so badly it killed off spin-off films for the future, and entire projects have been announced only to disappear into the void. So when she says, "I'm not retiring," all I hear is buckle up, we're stuck with more of the same, corporate-like answers, really for the rest of this interview, and they won't truly say or admit any issues with her tenure. She then admits what's happening at Lucasfilm is I've been talking for quite some time with both Bob and Alan about what eventual succession might look like. We have an amazing bench of people here, and we have every intention of making an announcement months or a year down the road. This is her way of acknowledging the inevitable while pretending she's still in control. Notice how vague this is? Months or a year down the road. That's corporate speak for "we'll drag this out as long as we can." Which is still mind-blowing to me because how much longer can this franchise suffer? How much longer can it bleed out before it is nothing but a husk and cast off into irrelevancy? And yeah, succession planning is smart, but the bigger issue is that it should have happened already. Disney has given her over a decade, and in that time we've seen more canceled projects than completed ones. Compare that to Marvel in the same time frame. They built an interconnected universe, turned C-tier characters into household names, and created box office history. Now I know Marvel has been on an overall downturn in quality for some time now, but Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four seem to be a sign they are righting the ship and returning to quality. I personally did like those movies. I know they're not perfect, but way better than what we've been seeing in the last few years. So, meanwhile, Star Wars under Kathy has been stop and go with very little long-term vision. It's so obvious. So if succession is coming, good, but it should have come years ago. Kathy also says we have every right to make that announcement when we want to make it. That's a direct clapback to rumors that Disney leadership is pushing her out. She wants to make it sound like she's choosing to step aside on her own terms. But come on. Bob Iger has to be looking at the state of Star Wars and realizing that something needs to change. Disney spent $4 billion on this brand, but the franchise has lost cultural momentum. Let's be real, you don't clarify succession unless there's smoke behind the fire. She's trying to project strength, but to me, this just highlights the fact that she knows her grip is slipping. I mean, she's about to get into it, and I'll go over the quotes real quick, but she hasn't been able to get a movie out for one of the biggest movie franchises in the history of cinema. Kathy then reassures fans, "I am continuing. I am producing the Mandalorian movie right now, and I am also producing Sean Levy's movie, which is after that. And to this, I would say I'm not sure how this upcoming Mandalorian movie will do. We now have a release date of May 22nd, 2026, and after the new trailer that just dropped, I am still not seeing much hype for this at all. To me, the Mando and Grogu movie screams corporate slop and something to try and capitalize on that Grogu hype Star Wars had a few years ago for normies, which I really don't see much of now. The show fell flat on its face after season 3, and this movie seems a little bit too late, and also a sign of desperation to push out a movie on the big screen since The Rise of Skywalker. And Sean Levy's movie, Starfighter, sure, it could be good. They got Ryan Gosling attached. Some of the promos that they just dropped look cool. I'm actually digging the Cade Skywalker theories, but again, do we really trust Kathy to shepherd that project? History says no, I say no. Just look at how many directors have been fired or replaced under her watch. Phil Lord and Chris Miller, Colin Trevorrow, even Gareth Edwards had his movie reshot behind his back. That's not leadership, that's chaos, but apparently there is none. But scoopers and YouTubers alike have even recently commented that the Sean Levy Ryan Gosling Starfighter movie is a last-ditch effort by Kennedy to get a project under her purview, greenlit, and in production, so something coming out in the future will have her fingerprints on it. And with it being set after the sequels, it will further cement their decision to double down on the post-sequel era and build off that part of the timeline. Now I'm going to skip the next 4 questions. I will link the article below in the description, so if you want to check it out and read for yourself, you can click on that here. But scrolling down, one of the bigger reveals in the article is that Simon Kinberg is working on a new trilogy described as the next saga that moves us into the future. Now, if any of you have seen the video I made discussing this news some months ago, you might remember that this reveal was apparently a surprise to some Disney execs and was not expected as a direction the franchise was taking. Now, I don't truly have anything against Kinberg. He worked with Lucasfilm before on Rebels, but let's not forget he also wrote X-Men Dark Phoenix, which bombed. So forgive me if I'm not exactly excited about him taking on a Star Wars saga, especially if it's episodes 10, 11, and 12 with Rey.
I bypassed the compressor.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
And this is the bigger issue. Why are we still in this cycle of announcing flashy new projects with no guarantee they will ever see the light of day? Remember Rian Johnson's trilogy? Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron? Kevin Feige's Star Wars movie? All announced with fanfare, all quietly shelved. This is what Kathleen Kennedy's leadership has given us. Lots of hype, very little payoff. She also mentions other projects, James Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi, Taika Waititi's mysterious Star Wars film, and the uncertain future of Tony Gilroy after Andor. Mangold's film, still in script stage. Taika's film, no timeline. I don't even think it's going to happen personally. And Gilroy, probably the best writer in the Disney Star Wars era, doesn't even know if he'll come back, but I'm not even sure he wants to. He's been very vocal that he doesn't want to do Star Wars forever. He's not even a real big Star Wars fan at all. But this is the amazing bench Kathy keeps talking about in this interview and what she's constantly bragging about. More like a bench of half-finished ideas maybe, especially with Andor over after its second season. Kathy then tries to deflect criticism, saying it's very hard for anything to happen within Star Wars without some aspect of it becoming public before you even want it to become public. Translation, don't blame me for all the canceled projects, blame the leaks. She also says, we want to make those things that we feel are the best. We want to make those things that as time passes feel relevant to what the audience is responding to. Okay, but here's the problem. What audience are you listening to? Because if you look at fan reactions online, a huge portion of the fan base feels alienated. The sequel trilogy divided the fandom like never before. Merchandise sales for sequel characters were weak. I really should just say abysmal compared to classic ones. And Disney has been leaning harder and harder on nostalgia because the new stuff hasn't stuck. Looking at this from today, that Variety article from the end of August, Disney's Boy Trouble, depicts this lack of audience and highlights Star Wars and Marvel's issues with losing the attention of a younger male audience. So Disney knows that they have lost an important paying audience and pretty much a younger generation of fans. They are looking for new original ideas now to try and garner up male viewership, while these traditional boy franchises are floundering for their attention. So when she says relevance, it just sounds like another excuse for why projects keep getting delayed or scrapped, without her looking in the mirror and taking accountability. Finally, when asked if she'll step down by the end of 2025, Kennedy says, "We really don't know at this stage." And she ends it with, "This is all 100% her decision. It is up to her how this goes and when she leaves." And that's the problem. There's no urgency. There's no accountability. Just maybe, someday, who knows. Meanwhile, Star Wars is floundering. Marvel may be struggling now too, but at least Marvel had a decade of dominance. Star Wars should have been a slam dunk. Instead, it's been one step forward, two steps back. So real quick, I want to see how some of this has aged over the last few months. When you compare what she said then to what we are seeing now, you realize nothing has really changed. We still have little to no idea what is the main focus for the future. We have James Mangold working on a movie set 25,000 years before A New Hope, Dave Filoni to tie together the post-Return of the Jedi era, and Simon Kinberg is taking the timeline forward after The Rise of Skywalker. Now there's also the Mandoverse movie, Mandalorian and Grogu, a standalone movie, the Starfighter, the Maul show, Ahsoka Season 2, and maybe that Rey movie? There's 3 completely separate eras, multiple visions, and still no unified roadmap. According to some recent reports, the Rey movie may be quietly cancelled again. Taika Waititi's project is still floating in limbo, and even Kennedy admits not everything gets made. But this is Star Wars. It shouldn't be a revolving door of half-baked pitches. It deserves better planning. Kennedy also keeps saying she's trying to accommodate top talent. But this is Star Wars. Top talent should be making time for Star Wars, not the other way around. When Lucas ran the franchise, it wasn't about chasing every big name. It was about telling the story he wanted to tell. By the way, there was also this decision she made earlier in the year to screen the original 1977 cut of A New Hope. But here's the thing, George never wanted that version shown again. He always believed that the special editions were his definitive vision, or at least the closest he can get to what his vision was. Whether fans agree or not, that was the creator's choice. So for Kennedy to drag out the original cut at some film festival earlier this year, now it feels like a betrayal of the man who built the universe, which she's already betrayed him a few times, especially when he put her in charge. So yeah, looking back, that article has aged exactly how I expected. Scattered plans, stalled projects, and decisions that show Kennedy still doesn't respect George Lucas's legacy. In this article, she even says, "I've loved working with Disney, and the company's been fantastic in its support of the IP. They've expanded things in ways I don't think George could have even imagined." Now, obviously, it's no secret that Disney has the backing to allow for more Star Wars to be made compared to when George was in charge. Not doubting that. However, to say that they've expanded things in ways that he couldn't have even imagined is abysmal to me. That is a crazy take. That is ridiculous. George had so much planned for the future if he wanted to take it forward. And a lot of us fans really think it would have been way better than what Disney would have done. Yes, George has had his faults. Dialogue isn't his best strong suit. There are other things about the prequels and the OTs people still debate. But I think this is just another ignorant comment by Kennedy that also kind of really ties up this article and where we're seeing Star Wars now, even months after this article was released. So let's sum this up. Kathleen Kennedy's interview was meant to project stability, but it only proves the opposite. She's clinging to power while the brand suffers. She's talking about succession, but refusing to commit to a timeline. She's still attaching herself to projects when her track record shows she shouldn't. And she's blaming leaks and relevance instead of owning up to poor planning. But here's my take. Kathleen Kennedy's time as president of Lucasfilm has been defined by inconsistency, bad management, and multiple missed opportunities. It's been over a decade since Disney bought Lucasfilm. We've had a fractured sequel trilogy, multiple canceled projects, and only a handful of bright spots, but not enough. And as Thor Skywalker has said, Star Wars is like the Yankees. Fans expect greatness. The passion is undeniable. But the problem is that unlike the Yankees, Star Wars has been underperforming for years now. Fans feel like they've been let down. I feel like I've been let down. And while Kathleen Kennedy may not want to admit it, the reality is that her tenure at Lucasfilm has been marked by a lack of vision, poor decision-making, and inconsistency. So I hope she goes soon, but until that happens, every new announcement will feel like deja vu. And honestly, I'm tired of deja vu. Well, that's all for today from your favorite galaxy far, far away. But that's just my opinion. What do you think? Do you believe Kathleen Kennedy has done enough damage and it's time for her to step aside? Or do you think she deserves more time to get it right? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the Star Wars galaxy. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you. Always.
Another happy landing.